You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio. Feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com where you can access our full podcast transcriptions. While you're there, you can also sign up for our thyroid and female hormone video series. This series goes into the root cause of why your hormones are out of balance. While you're there, you can also schedule a functional medicine consult with Dr. Justin, myself, where we'll dig deeper into the root cause of your health challenges. Feel free and think of sharing this podcast with at least one person. This podcast grows by people sharing it. Sharing is caring. If you can think of one person that can benefit from this information, please feel free and share it. If you're enjoying the podcast, click below the video or podcast where you'll see the iTunes review button and leave us a review on iTunes. You can also sign up for the newsletter at beyondwellnessradio.com where you can get updates before anyone else. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani here with Beyond Wellness Radio, and we got Beverly Meyer. I say it right, Bev?
Yes, that's right.
Great, awesome. And Bev's website is ondielandhealth.com. And Beverly, we're really happy to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me on, Justin.
All right, great. Well, I'm on your site right now, and I know you've put a lot of information out there on vitamin K and GABA, and I kind of wanted to get a take of where you wanted to start.
Well, let's talk about GABA because it's a neurotransmitter that most people, including your regular physicians, have never heard about. Mm-hmm. And yet it's been a life-changing discovery for me when I found out 10 or 15 years ago that I basically had a life-threatening deficiency in the neurotransmitter GABA. Mm. So let me give you a really short course in neurotransmitters, and I write about this a lot on the blog, but basically there are four main neurotransmitters, two that are excitatory. I call them the go-go's, dopamine and acetylcholine. They help us work and focus and move and think and burn and go.
Yeah.
And then there's two inhibitory neurotransmitters, serotonin and GABA, GABA, mm-hmm. And these help us relax the muscles and digest our food and sleep and laugh and make love and just be at ease. And it's like the four tires on your car. You need the four neurotransmitters really, really well balanced, or your brain, the electricity in your brain does not fire properly.
Got it.
It's really cool because serotonin and GABA, everybody's heard of serotonin, and you may not know what it is or what it does, except you've associated it with the word depression, but it does so much more than that. And GABA also has many, even dozens of functions in the body, as does serotonin, but they're like brakes in your car. And if all you do is give it the gas, give it the go, 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 which is kind of how we are living today in modern life. Mm-hmm. Everything is a go and a sudden and a right now and an or else, which is very sympathetic nervous system.
Right.
And it's GABA and serotonin's job to help keep us in that parasympathetic mode where we are healthy and happy.
Okay, got it. And that parasympathetic is the healing, relaxation, digestion, where the sympathetic is the go, 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 stress, 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 breakdown, breakdown.
Yeah, and there's the go-go neurotransmitters are not necessarily sympathetic nervous system, but they are very active. The work, the move, the exercise, the physical and emotional focus. But we're also locked up into anxiety and insomnia and perfection and speed these days that it's really easy to burn out these neurotransmitters that help keep us calm. And GABA has a strong relationship with gluten and gluten antibodies also. So Yeah, so that was a real key for me, is that it's like, okay, well, why does it get so low? I can take some herbs, some passion flower, and help support my GABA every day for the rest of my life. But it would be nice to know, how did I get this way, wired and tired? How did I get so burnt out and exhausted, but I can't sleep? And so this ties right in with adrenal burnout.
Got it. So can you talk about protein too? Go ahead. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I was going to say, I forgot where I was going to go with that sentence, so I'll turn it back to you for the next question.
Yeah, no problem. So protein, right? All protein becomes broken down into amino acids, and amino acids essentially can become, well, L-tryptophan will become our serotonin, L-tyrosine, our dopamine. Can you talk about how protein digestion is important for GABA production as well?
Well, no, actually, I that's the chemistry of how we produce GABA is not something that I'm particularly familiar with, so I can't talk about that. But I can tell you that we naturally produce GABA, but we can run short of it if we overuse it. And yes, like all amino acids, it is based in some form of a protein breakdown. But of course, there are many enzymatic reactions that have to happen for anything you eat to become something else.
Mm-hmm. Isn't L-theanine one of the main amino acids behind making GABA?
I don't think it's a component of GABA. It actually kind of helps. Well, it helps your body produce GABA or as a substitute for GABA. And theanine is something that many people do tolerate. Many people don't tolerate it, and it can. Some people have really great results with theanine. Personally, I never did. It just didn't work for me. I think I probably was missing some of those cofactors to help shift it. And that's when I found that the passion flower did a much better job for me.
How does the passion flower help increase GABA?
Well, it's got all the raw materials, and it basically just says, here's the GABA, do you want it? As opposed to buy a supplement called GABA on your shelf. Strangely, straight GABA is actually not the right thing to take. The GABA itself has to be in a form that's slightly altered for your body to be able to use it as a supplement. So it can be called pharma-GABA or phenobute, but it's phenylbutyric acid, and well, it's a longer word than that, but that's one way that you can try GABA. So there are different ways you can try it: pharma-GABA, the passion flower, some theanine, but some interesting things that also produce GABA, and that is alcohol, heroin, and marijuana. And one of the whole theories on addiction is that basically our brains say, I am in such need of GABA that I will turn to alcohol, heroin, or marijuana to provide that GABA that I need to survive. It's kind of a different way to think about it. I have a lot more compassion for people now that I realize, wow, they were really out of GABA too, just kind of like me, and I didn't end up as bad as that, but I had basically what was finally diagnosed as partial seizure disorder, and I actually started on low-dose anti-epileptics about 15 years ago, and I'm telling you, within a week, I felt like a new person. It really gave me hope that, wow, I'm not going to just die or fade away at the age of 50-something, that I can come back. And of course, I don't take those anymore, but they provided a pharmaceutical form of GABA that my brain could use to manage the brain waves, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about electricity in the brain, and GABA governs the even stability of electrical flow from left to right in the brain. And so you can imagine, if it's out of balance, if it's unstable, the GABA deficiency symptoms, which I write a lot about, can be diarrhea or constipation, high blood pressure or low blood pressure, insomnia, or even narcolepsy, excess sweating. So GABA is all about stability, in thinking, that the brain does not obsess about those 75 emails that you didn't do or that one that you did.
Right.
All that obsessive OCD stuff that a lot of us don't acknowledge that we really are struggling with. It's very GABA related, and people get hold of a couple bottles of passion flower. I have those in my online store, and you stick them in your purse, your kitchen, your car, your kid's backpack, and life becomes a lot easier.
Got it. And I know you mentioned addiction and drugs. They're basically stimulating GABA, right? I mean, it's not a building block for GABA. It's kind of like whipping a tired horse. Is that correct?
Well, they're not repairing
Right.
the temporal lobe
Restorative.
malfunction. They're not restorative, but they are providing. We all know that, for most people, if you've had a hard day, you have a glass of wine, you tend to relax. I mean, there it is. So it is providing some of that GABA as a relief, but obviously we have to look at the lifestyle factors that have caused your brain to be so overloaded. And remember earlier I was starting to mention that there is a gluten antibody link here as well, and that ties into what are called the GAD65 enzymes.
GAD65, right.
Yeah, and very related to GABA utilization in the body, but can also be really hampered by gluten antibodies.
Right, and that's those discotartockinesia type of movements where people maybe have those jitters, almost like an intention tremor, so to speak, and you can see that, and gluten antibodies can easily be created that actually go in and attack that GAD65 enzyme, which actually create that GABA, correct?
Right, and remember, when you talk about any kind of a tremor, what you're talking about is exactly that unstable firing that I was talking about. It's kind of like part of the brain is firing, if you will, and
right.
Instead of just an even, I'm just making this up, but instead of an even that you
right.
want. And so yes, active tremors are Tourette's, ataxia, stumbling, these can be very strong clues for severe GABA deficiency.
And obviously giving someone passion flower that has a gluten sensitivity and they're making all these GAD65 antibodies, you have to get them off the gluten, right?
Absolutely. That's my motto on my website and my podcast is food first, that we're not running lab tests, we're not doing anything. I'm taking your history, but until we get your diet really, really clean and get everything we can think of that might have some antibody and blood sugar impact on your body, till we get that stuff out and get the nutrient-dense, rich foods and fats in there, then we start over and completely take the history from scratch, because you're a completely different person.
Exactly. Now, there are a lot of people that say GABA can't cross the blood-brain barrier. It's too big of an amino acid. So what's your take on giving an herb like passion flower, giving an amino acid like L-theanine, and then also doing the pharma-GABA sublinguals? What's your take on those three?
Well, that's the reason why you don't use a product that's just called straight GABA. And this is a little odd, but straight GABA can cross the blood-brain barrier, but that's one reason why you don't want to use it. I know that sounds backwards, but this is why you want the phenylbutyrate form of it, that it actually has a different pathway. So if someone takes straight cheap GABA, just GABA on the label, and feels calmer and much more relaxed, that's actually diagnostic of what we call leaky brain syndrome, just like there's leaky gut.
Right, yeah.
Leaky brain, leaky lung, leaky gut, the three big places that we leak. So GABA is not supposed to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier, but the altered form can. And this is also where the herb seems to do just a stellar job, is that it enables that package to be delivered. And it doesn't have to be sublingual. It can be a pill. Sublingual's fine too for the phenylbutyrated form.
Got it. So if someone's taking GABA and they're getting a benefit from it, and we know such a large percent of the population more than likely has leaky gut just from grains and stress and infections, etc., Does that mean someone shouldn't use GABA if they're getting a benefit from it, if they're getting that relaxation effect?
No, but it does mean that they need to come and talk to Dr. Justin and find out how they're going to help manage the antibodies and the leaky gut and the all this debris and inflammation in the body.
Got it. So what you're saying, it's a sign of something deeper. It's okay to use it, but you really got to put your attention on the gut, the diet, the stress, the sleep, the whole 9 yards, the big picture, right?
Absolutely. It's all about food and lifestyle.
Wow. I know we're kind of just got into the GABA part, and it's very interesting. Can you tie this back a little bit into your story? Because you've been a nutritionist for a very long time. I think 30 years, you said. Can you talk more about your story and then kind of get back into what we're talking about here?
Yes. I'm in my 60s, and I saw my first natural health practitioner in 1972 when even the word natural health practitioner was a very odd thing to say. People had no idea what you were talking about. So this body has just had a hard time, and it wasn't until I was in my 40s that the celiac disease got confirmed. I'd already been off of wheat, but when I discovered how much better I felt off of gluten and then off of all the grains and then off of all the dairy and then off of nuts and then off of nightshades and then off of eggs, I laugh with people in the paleo diet when I have them on my show or I'm on their shows, and I say, I was eating paleo before it had a name. So I just figured this stuff out for myself because I've been really so sick most all of my life, and I've also had a history of extremely poor adrenal function. The first saliva test I ever ran on anybody was on myself. And when I got it back, there was just a little flat straight line, a number 1 straight across the bottom of the page.
Wow.
And I called the lab and I said, there's something wrong with the report. There's no cortisol here. And I didn't tell them it was me. And they said, wow, you need to call this patient. They need to be in the hospital immediately. I said, well, you're talking to her. And I have 2 patients after this. So, that was a big wake-up call for me. I had severe Epstein-Barr virus at the time. I'd had a really bad concussion. I was going into menopause. Really, really bad time. And I never did get on steroids, which is what they told me. But I did understand that it was time to really seriously get help, or I was not going to make it. So that was quite some time ago, but here I am, running my businesses and podcasts, and I don't travel to Costa Rica or whatever anymore. I just don't do that. I control my environment and my food very carefully, and then things in this body work pretty well.
Oh, so you had the autoimmune condition Addison's, where you were literally attacking your adrenal glands.
Yes, absolutely. Celiac, Addison's, and Graves' disease on top.
Wow.
So my poor thyroid, since I didn't have any adrenal function, the thyroid was in high gear trying to help me, stand up and pump blood, and then the gluten wasn't all out at that time either. So that kind of took the thyroid out, but I knew I could get that back, and that's when I went and basically said, all right, what's underneath all of this? And that's when I found out about the electrical malfunction in my brain and the temporal lobe dysfunction where the GABA is working.
So the first thing you did was to kind of help balance that brain chemistry for you. Was it the passion flower, or were you doing the sublingual GABA?
No, the first thing I did was get on low-dose anti-epileptics.
Okay.
That's because, when I had an amazing neurologist, of which there is no one like him. He's a crazy man, but he totally saved my life.
Wow.
But he does very elaborate testing and brain scans, stuff nobody else does. And he said, you have no GABA function. You're at 15% of normal. And, that you're probably having low-grade seizures and probably have had them for a long time. And I burst into tears, and it was, he's like, oh, don't be upset. I'm like, I'm not upset. I'm so happy. When somebody finds an answer, that that gives you a whole new sense. And he said, well, I know your background. You do naturopathic counseling and herbs and supplements and foods. Would you be willing to take a prescription drug? And I burst into tears again, and I said, you had me at the word seizures.
Wow.
So I took very low dose drugs, and with a lot of muscle testing to confirm which drug would work best for me and what dose. And this man was brave enough that he honored that. He said, you tell me which of these you handle the best and what dose is right for you.
And so how did you transition off the pharmaceuticals onto the more natural herbal approach?
Basically, at that point, I just stopped working and basically stayed home in a beautiful environment that I have here with the nature and animals. I have 2 horses, and just basically kind of withdrew to the cave. Well, went to ground to just eat and rest and not have obligations, because it's this constant pressure on us now for performance, obligation, and speed that I think is really killing us. And so I'm kind of on a mission to help people. Look, let's get this diet right, but then the next thing we got to do is, we got to take a serious look at your life and your belief structure. All this leftover stuff from your parents multiplied by 100, by everything, your peers and on TV and stuff. And learn how to take control of your own life and say, you know what, that doesn't work for me, and I'm not going to do that.
Got it. So you were on these epileptic drugs to help balance the brain chemistry, and then you transitioned over to some of the herbal approach, and that made a big difference. You were able to come off the drugs when you transitioned over?
Yes, and that's also when I found out that I did have celiac, and then running the Cyrex Labs array for gluten antibodies and
array 5 on that one.
It used to have the GAD65 antibodies in with the gluten, and they no longer do. And that's when it all went, ding in my brain that, oh my gosh, this is a coming from a lifetime of gluten and so on. And so you keep finding out where to go and tightening it up as you go.
And when you're working with your patients, getting them to go gluten-free, are you doing just a straight gluten-free, or are you doing a grain-free where you're getting them off of all grains?
No, I strongly encourage them to go full paleo, as strong and as far and as fast as they can, because I want people. We all know that if you're drinking 12 Cokes a day, you're going to feel a little better if you get down to 6 Cokes a day.
Right.
But you really don't know who you are or what your chemistry is all about until you get to I call it go to your corner. It's like when you're in a boxer and you're in a fight and they ring that bell, you go to your corner and you get taken care of in that corner. You get to sit down, you get water, you get to rest, you don't have to think about anything. It's your safe place. And I want people to experience that a big enough change in food can create a place where they can feel, oh, I feel much better. And that if they stray out of that, they can experiment with, okay, that didn't work, or, well, okay, that wasn't so bad as long as I only did it once or twice. And the whole point, as you know, Justin, is to give people the power to take care of themselves and not be reliant on you. Otherwise, we'd each have 1 million clients, and we're overbooked and we're overworked too. And we want people to understand, here's what I think your biggest areas you can help yourself are. And I'm going to hammer at these until I feel like you're getting somewhere. And then we're going to look at the adrenals and some supplements and this and that and mercury fillings and all the rest.
Yeah, that's a good approach. I mean, with my patients, very similar. Almost all patients for the first month at least are on a strict autoimmune paleo approach, where it's really just meat, vegetables, and maybe a little bit of low sugar fruit. And again, not even white rice. Again, paleo has kind of been co-opted a little bit where white rice is now paleo and white potatoes are paleo. So I just keep it really strict to an autoimmune paleo, and it sounds like you're doing something very similar.
Absolutely. And sometimes people have a rough time the first week or so because they're so addicted to the gluten and the dairy and the sugars and all that. But some people, within 36 hours, they're already like a new person. And then they trust you. They're like, oh my gosh, this is a little hard, but wow, I think my whole life is about to change. What do I do next? And they're excited for what's going to come next.
Yeah, diet is one of the biggest factors that can push your body into a pro-inflammatory, you're inflamed, to an anti-inflammatory state where you're healing. And that has a huge effect on the gut. Like you mentioned, if you have GAD65, you're messing up your brain. If you have GAD65, you probably also have a leaky gut going on there. Can you talk about how brain health and how GABA is tied in with the gut, especially if you have a leaky gut issue?
Our genetics are a little bit in trouble as it is. Our genetics are a little bit in trouble. We're not born very strong right now, a lot of us. We're already having problems as children. And so we're not developing the strong immune systems that we should be. So it really does get back to the generational strength of the immune system and what we're fed.
Wow, because I know in the pre-interview we were talking about that. We were talking about Weston A Price and the Activator X and Vitamin K. I think this is a really good time to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of Weston A Price's work and kind of dovetail into Vitamin K and how that's so important as we grow with the structure of our face and health.
Well, yes, and the first thing I want to say about Weston Price is that the man was incredibly brilliant. His work is incredibly brilliant, and to me, it's a shame that a lot of people have taken his work and used it as an excuse to eat nonstop, wheat and rice and oats and bread as long. Oh, but I soaked it first before I ate it. So I just have to throw that in there that no matter how many great things I say about Weston Price, it's what some of us have done with his work that I just want to caution people about. But Weston Price was like the original jungle man. He was already well up in age in the 1930s, 1940s as a dentist, and his patients' teeth were falling apart. Each generation would come in and like their faces were getting narrow, their palates were more V-shaped instead of a big wide U shape. The teeth were crowded. They were having health problems. The narrow chins, receding chins, and he was determined that this had something to do with nutrition and that he wanted to find out what. So he went all over the world with his wife back in times when, you had to take 17 trains and 3 camels to get anywhere.
Absolutely.
And then lived with isolated peoples from the Outer Hebrides in Scotland and up in, the Inuit, the Eskimo, the African tribes, whatever. And he spent years with people cataloging what they ate and what they used. Oh, that particular oyster or mussel they used. And when do you use that? Oh, you use that as soon as a woman knows she's pregnant. That's really interesting. He documented all this stuff and took thousands of photographs of big, wide, smiling cheekbones, which these people had, and they had all of their adult teeth and no cavities. And when he put all his research together, what it all boiled down to, this is so interesting, his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, is a really interesting book. It's not a hideous, boring textbook. It's actually really pretty interesting. But anyway, he put all this research together and said, here's the bottom line. No matter where you are, no matter what you eat, all these people I spoke with had 10 times the amount of vitamin A, X factor, that he said these are fat-soluble vitamins, and they have 10 times the amount we have in the United States in the 1930s and 40s. And golly, we were still eating organic and fresh ground nuts and seeds then.
Exactly.
So
there was no conventional food back then.
No, so we were eating pretty well, but as he said, people's facial structure was already collapsing in, and that was his impetus to research this. So it turns out that his Activator X is what we know as vitamin K2, not K1, but K2, and that indeed A, D, and K really must be all taken. You don't want to just have one or two without the others. And that's why cod liver oil has vitamin A and vitamin D, but it has no vitamin K. So you must take supplemental K2 if you're going to take any kind of vitamin D, and that includes the cod liver oil.
And what if you have enough grass-fed butter in your diet? Would that be enough for the vitamin K2?
Possible. And that's a good question, Justin. The best place I can tell people to read a quick summary is on my website. There's two blog posts on vitamin K2. One for its effect on heart disease and the arteries and plaquing of the arteries, and the other is on structure of your face and facial bones and cheekbones and your teeth. And there's a podcast too. So people can really get deeply into this. And what was your question?
Yeah, so we were just talking about because the big sources of vitamin K2, from what I understand, are grass-fed butter, also egg yolks as well. So if someone's consuming good, healthy egg yolks and good, healthy grass-fed butter, can they get enough vitamin K in that from a food-based source?
Possibly. And pastured egg yolks contain some vitamin K. Pastured spring grass-fed organic butter has some vitamin K, but not a lot. It's you'd have to eat like 10 pounds of butter a week or something. I forget the statistic. It's on my blog post. But the combination of true fermented foods, pastured egg yolks, pastured butter, and then, of course, the more pastured animal fats and organs we eat, we can accumulate and maintain some vitamin K. But really, at this point in my life, the only supplements I take are vitamin D and vitamin K2. And in the summer, I don't really take much D because I'm out with the horses. So the other richest source of vitamin K, it's emu oil. But a particular emu oil, it's in my store. You may want to put it in yours too. And it's a heritage species of emu. It's not the emu oil people use for cosmetics and massage lotions. But these are from male emus, and they have this fat storage like a backstrap down their backs, and the males, emus, sit on the eggs for 6 weeks and live on this vitamin K fat storage and the other nutrients that are there. They live on that. They never leave the nest. And omega 369, anti-inflammatory, nutrient-dense food, and you can get it in a capsule. It's called Walkabout Emu Oil. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Wow, very cool. So you're kind of taking us down the story of Weston A. Price and all the different cultures he discovered, and I think he even came to the conclusion that the healthiest cultures were the ones that were eating animal products. And also to note, I think Price actually went into this as a vegetarian, or thinking that the vegetarian diets were going to be the healthiest, but I think that he found the opposite. Is that correct?
Yeah, he just said he had an open mind. He was just a wonderful person. He said, something's wrong with people, our bodies. He calls it injuries, facial injuries.
Right.
That you have the narrow face and narrow chin and narrow palate and receding chin and narrow hips. He said this is going to lead to fertility problems and depressions and anxieties and dental problems and all this stuff. He totally predicted it all. And really, I'm kind of a poster child for, Weston Price would take one look at me and he'd say, see, there you go. That's exactly what I predicted. Because I'm very tall but very narrow, and my whole body is that way, but my palate is too, and that seems to be my latest breakthrough in the last couple years, is discovering that I can reshape my palate even at my age, and move my lower chin forward just by wearing some dental appliances, not by surgery, and take the pressure off the brainstem and all of this, I had a miraculous decrease in my anxiety as I just began to move the tiniest bit to move my lower chin forwards. It's really interesting work.
So how does someone find someone that specializes in that type of work?
Yeah, good question. There's some information about that on my website, but if you do some search, there's a whole new types of dentists now, just like in naturopathic doctors and so on. There's new types of dentists now. There's a field they call sleep dentistry, and the sleep dentists can go one of two ways. They may go into the CPAP to we're going to fix your sleep problems, but you're going to have to wear this CPAP and have surgery on your airway, etc. Or the other ones that say the problem is that your lower jaw is compressing back on your airway and your tongue is in the wrong place. You don't hold your tongue up well. And they have, I call them retainers, but they're mouthpieces, mouth appliances. Some you wear in the day, some you wear at night, that just reposition the jaw, and the ones at night actually hold your jaw open for you, just enough to open the airway. So you don't want jaw surgery. So you can look for the more enlightened you can Google sleep dentistry in your area. The name of one of the dental appliances is called the Mora, M-O-R-A, M-O-R-A. And there's another one called ALF, A-L-F. And there are now also pediatric orthodontists that are getting into this big time because they're seeing these young patients coming in, 3, 4, 5 years old already with these narrow pointed chins, and they know they got a lifetime of dental problems ahead of them. So they start the youngsters on kind of like an athlete puts in his mouth before he goes to play football, but
Right.
they're not, so hideous, but they're little soft, pliable shapers that they teach the children to wear when they sleep, so that they, while their jaws are really malleable, can reshape that palate. And then I, of course, have to throw in there, it's like, yes, and don't forget to give them a little emu oil, too, for that vitamin K.
That's great. When I was growing up, I was a big, I sucked my thumb a lot. I was a big thumb sucker. So I created that V-shape arch, and I had to wear an appliance for years to kind of bring my arch back. And I know nutritionally, I wasn't in the best shape when I was younger. So again, good nutrition is really important. How do they know what the shape of the mouth should be? Are they just kind of using kind of measurements and basing it upon, where the bite should fall or where the jaw alignment should go? How do they figure out what's normal for you?
Well, the first question is what's normal for a human?
Right.
And that's where you go back to Weston Price, who, like I say, took thousands of photographs of people's faces and teeth. And so we know what it's normal
How
for
it looks, right.
a human face to look like.
How's that quantified, though?
I'm not quite sure about your question.
Are there certain measurements they're looking at to figure out exactly, hey, your front, I'm not familiar with the dental terminology, but your incisors are this much off by your canines or this or that to objectify it?
I don't know. I just know that when you see a person with a narrow face and therefore narrow cheekbones and, that narrow face, we're used to seeing people with very narrow faces now, long and narrow faces. It's unusual to see people with wide faces and strong jaws, kind of like George Clooney, for example. We call them, handsome, George Clooney and Arnold Schwarzenegger, because of that wide cheekbone and strong square jaw. So that's what we're looking for, the jaw that doesn't point and drop down, that the face isn't narrowing, and that the palate itself is as fully spread and expanded as it can be.
When you watch TV, one of the interesting things that Price talked about, I think it was Price, was the rule of thirds, and that's the bottom part of the chin that goes up to the bottom part of the nose. That should be 1/3 of your face, while the bottom part of your nose to the brow area, the second third,
Mhm.
and then the eyebrow to where the hairline starts should be the third. And you should, when you watch TV, you can see lots of people, they either have a small middle third or they have a small lower third where you could see that really small chin. I can think of a few actors on TV that I won't name though. And then also the other big thing is that's clinically relevant is a big forehead. A larger third forehead's a big sign of gluten sensitivity. That's actually, I forget which journal it is, but they said it was clinically diagnostic as a criteria for gluten sensitivity.
Wow. It's really fascinating stuff, but it gets back to gluten and vitamin K2, and then they're going to all get back to the temporal lobes in the brain, which is right at your TMJ, and your ability to create and utilize GABA, and it all ties in.
Yeah, it does. And Hollywood's, we think of like George Clooney or someone of that as being attractive, and what really is attractiveness, and a lot of it comes down to fertility and health. If you look at the Weston A. Price book, you can see the different tribes they go to. You can see the tribes that are eating that healthy diet. You can see the robust shape of their face, and you can see the ones that deviate just, I think, one generation. There's a massive difference.
That's right. That's right. So I don't know too many people that have all 32 adult teeth.
I know. That's true.
Pretty rare. Yep.
And there's a plastic surgeon. His name's Dr. Marquardt, and he created something called the Marquardt mask, and he's basically quantified attractiveness with this number. I forget what the exact number is, but he finds that there's this evenness that needs to be within all parts of the face, and that's all people that are like the most attractive. So for instance, he'll overlay it with Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt, and you'll see it's like perfect, and then he'll overlay it like with someone that you may not see being attractive, and you can see where things don't line up. So it's kind of interesting how this Weston A. Price thing, formation and health, kind of ties into attractiveness, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's facial recognition. The toys we make for children have the wide set eyes, and the mouth is in a certain place, and we train early on for facial recognition.
But it's interesting how Hollywood's almost telling us the opposite, where we have these super skinny, emaciated girls,
right,
in modeling now, and it's like we're almost trying to be tricked into what health is now, what attraction is now, and it's almost the opposite. What's your take on that?
Well, absolutely. It's, I wish I had a nice, robust body instead of my narrow, crowded body.
Right, exactly. Well, is there anything else you wanted to tie into on the nutrition, Weston A. Price, and just overall health?
Well, I think, again, the point I want to stress with people is when, and you, I'm sure, get your share of people this way too, they want to jump straight to the supplements. And okay, maybe they'll diet, or maybe they'll even do a lot of change on their diet, but we're still trained in that culture of one pill for one ill. And I'm sure you've had this too. I've had people walk into my clinic and say, I have diabetes and high blood pressure, and I'm prone to blood clots. Which pill should I take?
Right.
And it just blows my mind that people can even generate that question in their own mind. That it doesn't have anything to do with you, and you just need somebody to give you the pill. And that it really does come down to your food and your lifestyle and your ability to however it works, to get good, deep counseling on the patterns that run you. And I'm personally a big fan of EFT, emotional freedom techniques. And remember when I told you when I was diagnosed first and went on the low-dose antileptics and was so sick, and basically just retreated home to the cave. And that's really what I did. I did EFT, 10, 20, 30, a little tiny notepad and pen on my person, literally 24 hours a day. And when a thought would come up and I could feel my heart rate go up, that anxiety would come up, and, which I know now is the brain misfiring. And I'd write down, what were you just thinking? I just had that thought. Well, what will so-and-so think when they hear this and that, and literally write down what was that thought. Or even in reading a book, I'd be calm, happy reading a book, and then suddenly it's like, wow, I'm feeling a little anxious. was I thinking something? No, what did I just read? And even to go back to some passages and say, wow, yeah, that just triggered some pattern for myself too about that reaction. So I really kept great notes on that, and then I would do the EFT tapping on those patterns. And to this day, I still do EFT, and I work with other different kinds of therapists and hypnotherapists, whatever works, to address these patterns. But the first key is to become familiar with those voices in your head, the ones that say, oh, that was stupid. Well, great, write that down. You know, you got to get to know those demons. And I joke about it, and on my blog post, I say, you know, it's just like a jukebox. And that one that says, well, that was stupid, that was, you know, that was D42. And the one that says, oh, they just don't know, I'm smarter than they are, well, that might be A11, you know.
Right.
They're just buttons that you push. And, you know, get to know them. And if it pops up, you can laugh at it and go, oh, my gosh, it's A11 again. And, you know, I've heard you before. I know who you are.
Right.
And it's that ability to just take on and acknowledge, yep, there's that thought and there's that pattern. And
I'm a huge fan of EFT. I've been using it for a couple of years. I recommend my patients use it, or I refer out to different practitioners. And just for everyone listening, it stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. It was a technique derived from Dr. Diamond in the 80s, and I think Gary Craig then took it and turned it from temporal tapping or tapping solution to EFT. And it's a great technique to neutralize negative emotions that are trapped in our nervous system, so to speak. Can you talk more about how you use it with your patients? Are you trying to find out what that negative thought is that you labeled A2 on the jukebox? And do you just talk about that emotion as you go through the various tapping points?
I don't take that responsibility of teaching and working with EFT with my clients.
Okay.
Sometimes I will, and we will. I say, look, let's get away from this table. Let's go sit over here and let's talk about this great technique. Because I have found it so useful for anxiety, but it's also terrifically useful for pain and other physical symptoms. And, you know, for example, if you notice a pain in your right elbow and it's not usually there, or even if it is usually there, and you kind of focus it, make a distinction about that pain, is it stabbing? Is it throbbing? Is it burning? Is it itching? Whatever. And you make up a phrase to use, even though I have this stabbing pain in my right elbow, I love and accept myself deeply and completely. And that's kind of your little setup, and off you go from there.
Right.
And as you tap through the points, and this is so easy for your listeners, you can learn this in, 10 minutes. The 7, 8, 9 tapping points. It's ridiculously easy to learn. And but as you're tapping on things, sometimes the thing behind it will start to peek out. Maybe you're tapping on, even though I feel really hurt right now that person said that about me, I love and accept myself deeply and completely. And as you're tapping on it, your emotions may shift from anger to sorrow, to guilt, to revenge. And each of those just lets you keep following that trail of that emotion and how it lives in you. And to even, like I said, it paints a picture of that feeling, that phrase, that emotion that you can recognize again when you see it.
Got it. Yeah, I do the same thing. I refer out to various YouTube videos or even online Skype practitioners that will work through some of my patients that have deeper stuff. And I think it's definitely a great way to neutralize it, because it's all subconscious. How do you get to the subconscious mind outside of that, or maybe hypnosis? Yeah,
well, you pay attention and you do learn as you go. But I can do EFT easily in the car at the stop sign. I'm rushing, I'm late, and I'm going to tap on the fact that, why do I do this? Why do I make myself late? And then I rush. And then I get all, A2 and B9 about, what are people going to think? Or what if I don't show up? Or they're going to think badly if I'm 10 minutes late and whatever. It's
Right.
just, it's all just worthless trash, but it's useful to use to understand yourself. And then you just tap it out and have a big sigh, and then you feel a lot calmer.
That's good. I love that. Very good. Well, is there anything else that you want to touch upon that you find really important for the listeners to know?
Well, I'm going to give a little plug for my DVD here, The Diet for Human Beings, because it's the only DVD that's going to help teach people how to eat a paleo diet and why. It's simple to watch. It's easy to understand. It lets you understand the glucose insulin cycle and why starches make you feel bad, and what to eat and what not to eat. It's just an easy way, if you're not going to read a bunch of books, to learn what you're doing and why. And when your girlfriend or your parents or your coworker says, "Why are you eating that way?" that you can actually answer intelligently instead of, "Oh, it's that paleo thing," and then, that's not very empowering. So it's an easy way for people to learn and then pass it on to their spouse or their daughter. Say, "Here, you may not watch the whole thing, honey, but the sections 10, 11, and 12 just sound just like you. Here," and hand them the DVD. So it's a great tool, and then they can watch it and pass it on too. So I just needed to say that. I think people just go straight for the paleo recipes, but they don't understand, it's a rule: no grains, give me pancake that's paleo, and you want to understand what you're doing and why, and so you can have a little discernment. I have a pet peeve of paleo treats.
Yep.
These date, blueberry, coconut, honey balls. I'm like,
same amount of sugar.
That is not a paleo food. So, anyway, it's an easy way to teach yourself what to do and why.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I think all people need to understand why. There's power in why. I remember people, it still happens today when people ask me, "Hey, why do you eat that way?" And I look down at my watch and I say, "How long do you have?"
That's right. That's why I did the DVD.
Yeah.
I got tired of explaining it to them, and they got tired of hearing it.
I hear you. And then, again, people ask you, you can recommend them to Dr. Meyer's website, and then also from the podcast as well to get more info on this, because knowledge is power, especially if you are applying the knowledge. That's the most important thing.
Yes, it is.
Well, I want to leave you with my last two questions that I ask all my guests. If you were stuck on a desert island, what supplement or nutrient would you bring with you? And I think I already know.
Well, I won't need D on that desert island, but I might need some vitamin K.
I knew it.
But for sure, I'm going to make sure I have enough saturated fat, because I do think humans evolved to eat saturated fat, and not all proteins have high quality saturated fat. A equatorial fish does not have as much omega-3 as a cold water fish.
Right.
So I would have some good source of omega-3s with me, along with that emu oil.
Yeah, and just your luck, you're on a desert island with coconuts, then you get the saturated fat from there as well.
That's true.
Very cool. So with our listeners here, what would be like the last three suggestions that you kind of want to highlight, underline? What are the big three take-homes for people just to kick more butt?
Number one is get off of gluten as if your life depended on it and you had a firm diagnosis of celiac disease.
And by gluten, all grains, you mean, correct?
Well, first gluten. I mean, maybe not first, but I mean especially, I want people to treat gluten as your lipstick has gluten in it, your hair dye has gluten in it. You're handling the pet kibble that you're tossing back and forth from the bowl to the bin, and you're breathing all of that dust with wheat flour. And this is why I say to really learn all the sneaky places that you may think you're gluten-free, but you're not. And because we want to get those antibodies under control as quickly as possible. So that's number one, is no matter what, gluten-free, and just tell people you have celiac disease, and it helps the waiter. He doesn't have to listen to your story. He knows what to do.
Exactly. Just say you have an allergy, you're celiac. That's it.
That's right. And I'm going to die on your doorstep if you don't listen to my order, and that'll get their attention. Number two would be know yourself. Listen to those patterns in your mind and learn them and what triggers them and whose pattern was that anyway? You know, who's the one that said you better make straight A's and you're still knocking yourself out trying to straight A all your email responses and you know yourself and handle those drivers in your brain. And number three, do a saliva test and check your adrenal status because sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, sometimes it's normal, sometimes it's mixed. And I had no idea how sick I was until I did that saliva test. And that's what it took for me to finally wake up and say, oh my gosh, I'm in big trouble. This is no joke. And saliva test is a hugely useful test for cortisol and all the male and female hormones too, as long as you're at it.
Well, objective data can be incredibly motivating for people to make a change their diet. So I'm in full support of that, Doc. That's great.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And by the way, I am not a doctor, so I don't use the term doctor, although in Texas, you're allowed to use the term doctor and call yourself an ND, which I am very opposed to. People that have been to one weekend call themselves doctor and ND, this and that. So I try to be very cautious about the use of that term doctor for those who deserve it and have been to medical school.
I understand.
Yeah, and for all people listening to this, you should really question your practitioners. What medical school did you go to? What year? Did you graduate? And how long have you been practicing this particular specialty I'm consulting you with?
Right. And most medical doctors have got zero nutrition training at all in their medical school. So again, you've been doing this 30 years, so we appreciate your info and your input. And Bev Meyer's site is onhealthanddiet.com. Can you reiterate your podcast as well?
Yeah, it's On Diet and Health.
Diet and Health. We'll have that in the show host. ondietandhealth.com.
And that's my Twitter and Pinterest is On Diet and Health. My Facebook is Beverly Meyer on Diet and Health. It's a long name. And the podcast is Primal Diet, Modern Health. So you got that ancient food, but the best of modern health care.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Beverly. It was so great having you on the podcast.
Thank you, Justin. Those are your great questions. You're a wonderful interviewer and very thorough, I'm sure, with all your own patients.
Well, thank you so much.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com.